Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to the After Maghrib podcast. Hope you've had a fantastic week. We wanted to talk to you this week about something a bit interesting. We were scrolling through TikTok recently and we saw a caption which said, Arabs invented Islam. If you're not Arab, don't call yourself a Muslim. That is something which blew our minds. We don't know really where to begin, but I think I should start by asking in Arab. Sayed Ali, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
How you doing,
assalam
bro?
wa rahmatullah.
All good?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm okay, bro. Alhamdulillah.
How's the week?
It's been okay. It's been busy as usual. But I'm very glad because we have a dear friend in town, the poet, Shia Al Nouri Sardar. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum.
How you doing, bro? All good?
What's going on? Great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you back.
So excited.
It's good to be in your presence.
Your
Amazed
last,
to be in your
always.
presence after Maghrib podcast.
not at all, but not at
I
all.
watch all your episodes, every single one.
Is that legit?
No, as in I see you on YouTube. I press like and I just carry on. But it's good.
Fair
No, I've
enough.
seen some episodes. Mashallah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's good. Good
Alhamdulillah.
conversations.
How's life in the US?
It's nice.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Ups and downs.
Have
what
you
ups
seen
and
any
downs?
red MAGA hats?
No, I haven't.
Interesting.
Might buy one. I'm joking. No,
What's that?
no, yeah.
MAGA. Make America Great.
Ah.
Yeah, basically Trump hats.
Yeah.
But you know, it's funny. I don't think it's. It sounds really strange to say, but I don't think it's as racist as people kind of think it is. Like when I'm there, everyone asks me, "Oh, you're from London? Oh, you guys have a lot of stabbings, don't you?
Yeah,
you guys
yeah.
have, oh, you Staples Corner. You know, you guys have people debating. Sorry, not Speaker's Corner. But you know, it's funny. It's like it exists, but you don't really feel it. It's the same thing there.
Yeah.
Like obviously there are, you know, there is a lot of racism. There is
So
a
you
lot,
haven't seen any school shootings?
not personally, no.
Nothing like that.
No.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
I mean, I've heard gunshots. It's
I
quite
mean,
fun.
you live in Detroit.
Welcome to the US.
No, but it's interesting because like I think the news really like overblows a lot
of course.
of what's happening. Of course, things are bad there as they are everywhere, but living there and seeing people day to day, I mean, you do get areas that are very racist.
Yeah.
But generally, day to day, I think people are just focused on themselves and their livelihoods and stuff. They might have some questions about Islam and stuff, but generally, I think people are quite nice, maybe intrigued. Because I travel a lot in the States, and I'm always like praying in airports and stuff.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about America is you can have a conversation with anyone. Like I was telling you when I came back to Heathrow,
You did,
I
yes.
had a conversation with someone. I was like, oh, you know, where are you from? He's like, Lebanon. I was like, oh, what are you doing there? He goes, I live there. Oh, okay. I started speaking to him by myself. Oh, yeah, I moved to the US. And he was just ignoring me. And he kind of walked off. I was like, oh, have a safe flight. He's like, yes, bye.
I mean,
And I remember that London, people don't like to speak.
Yeah, and America's the opposite.
America's the opposite. You just have a conversation with, which I like. You have a conversation with anyone.
Every time I go to the US, it hits me. No matter how many times I go, you can be anywhere. You walk into a shop. Hello, sir. How are you? You having a great day? Like it hits you hard.
It's a nice vibe. People
It
are
is,
like
yeah,
very
it's-
polite and like they're inquisitive, and it's a place to communicate. Here, so everyone's to themselves, and you're kind of in your box.
But I think if you're not an American or if you're born and bred Londoner, it will take you a while to adjust.
I don't know, but I'm loving it personally.
Really, yeah.
So there's ups and downs for sure, but like the thing is, you guys know I used to go there every year anyway for for traveling and stuff, and it's a big adjustment in many ways. But there's a lot of positives that I like.
Will you come back to the UK?
Never.
Okay.
No.
Should I move to the States?
Everyone should stay, bro.
Okay.
100%. With this cost of living crisis, you don't want to be right now.
So do you consider, I think this is probably a good place to start. Do you consider yourself American or British?
Oh, British, born and bred, bro.
Yeah.
British passport. It's weird because like I was having this conversation with other friends as well. It's like it just feels so weird because it's not just I live in London. I was born and raised in London. Like everything about me is London. Since I opened my
From the
eyes
ends.
till age 32. And now I'm living on the other side in a place I've never really spent a lot of time in.
Across the ocean.
Seeing faces that are different, seeing communities that are different. It's interesting. It's nice. It's different. It's like an adventure, but it's very strange. It's there's actually a hadith from Imam Ali where he says he recommends doing hijrah because he goes, it will remove your anxiety, make you stronger, stuff like that. I'm just like not quoting exactly, but it's really true. You really feel it because such a weight on your mind. Like everything you have to do from the beginning.
That's why people travel.
Of course,
Have a holiday.
but not just traveling, also like living there, like figuring out, for example, how taxes work, and figuring out all the healthcare system and things that I've never dealt with in my life in that country. You got to work from the beginning. You got to build your credit again. It's interesting. It's fun. But going back to the point, I think there is definitely racism. Like there's been places where I've been to, like traveling between cities where you can feel the racism in people.
Yeah.
But generally, people on the ground, I think people are just generally very nice. They focus on their own lives and their own communities. Here, I actually feel like the racism is more hidden. Because here, people are very tribal. They're in like their own community and stuff. You have like the Pakistani community on one side, and every time you go to an area, it's specific to an ethnicity usually, in different parts of, or people at least clump together, based on their ethnicity. But that's a melting pot, so everyone's
Okay.
American. Obviously they have their roots in the.
They all identify as American.
Yeah, they're more American than we are British for sure.
Would you say the racism here is more subtle? Do you mean within the Shia community or just generally?
I'm saying
society?
generally. I mean, I'm sure it bleeds into the Shia community, but here, for example, I've realized the UK is very tribal.
Yeah.
Here, when people come here, the first thing they do is seek out their own kind, their own race,
That's
or their
true.
own country.
Yeah.
And then as a result, you have all these different kind of tribes that are like scrunched together,
Yeah.
which is why you have all this like, sectarianism, gang problems, crimes and stuff. And that kind of racism, which stems from, okay, we're this kind of person, you're that kind of person, but we're living in the same area. So we're going to keep a bit of a distance.
Yeah.
But there it's like you have to assimilate. You have to become American. So, that is historically what the country is about. It's like a melting pot, So I feel like, I'm sure there's racism in both countries, and here we can see it's getting worse. But I think here it's much more subtle, and I would argue much more, I don't know if it's more dangerous, but I've become more aware of it as
Yeah.
I've been kind of like growing up and realizing how things are over there.
Do you feel Arabs own Islam?
Definitely not. Arabs don't own Islam.
But do you think Arabs think they own Islam?
I mean, it's a blanket statement. I don't know.
course.
You can't like,
Of course.
put like
Generalize.
generalize. I think it's interesting because you guys, I think you're kind of like in the same boat because you're Khoja, but your granddad was living in Iraq, right?
My dad was born in Iraq, and
Yeah.
my dad's side has Iraqi heritage, and I'm married to an Iraqi.
So me,
But I'm a Khoja, so
it's weird for me because I grew up in a Sunni community.
yeah,
I'm Pakistani,
yeah.
but I kind of assimilated into the Iraqi community. But I'm British. I'm living in America. It's very strange.
And you're not even married to anyone,
Exactly.
any of those
And I-
nationalities.
Everyone
And I
assumes
feel- and I
you're
feel-
Iraqi.
I know. The funniest thing happened to me actually. I was flying from Detroit to California, and one of our friends is there living there, and I landed on Thursday, and I was there for like a few days. I landed early on Thursday. I didn't have a car. I was like, I'll get there early, see some friends. I called him, and he was like, bro, I'm busy today with work. I can't see you today. So I was kind of upset. I was like, what do I do? Like, I don't know anyone here. The guy that picked me up from the airport was from Karbala, Iraqi.
way.
Yeah. He's like, okay, let's go out to eat. And he brought all his friends. They're also from Karbala, and we're sitting down together. And I felt so at home. I was like, isn't it weird that a British Pakistani who lives in Detroit is in California and feels most at home when he's among Karbalais?
Alhamdulillah.
It's a very
Alhamdulillah.
weird.
blessing.
It's a very weird thing. But so for me,
Shout
like,
out to Karbalais.
yeah, but thing is, like, for me, I've realized like identity for me is very fluid. Like I'm not like
Of course,
I don't consider myself one thing, which is why like in our community, like everyone goes back to Najaf or back to Baghdad or back to Beirut or back to Pakistan to revisit their roots. For me, it's like, well, I was born and raised in the UK. That's kind of like my home, so I don't really feel at home when I go east. I don't feel at home.
But you feel at home in Karbala.
To an extent, to an extent, because once the ziyarah is finished, and all your friends are seeing their families and stuff, and you're just kind of like, you haven't got much
What
to
do I
do.
do?
Yeah, it's like now I don't feel at home either.
I mean, we live in a society now which is labeling people more than ever before. So no matter how much you try to identify and keep your identification consistent throughout the course of your life, there's more and more and more questions about identity and all of that being raised, whether it's in terms of your nationality, your gender, your orientation, all of these things. And I think that will, I believe, trickle into the Muslim community at some point. And the thing is, the beautiful thing about the Western Muslim community is that we are all children of diaspora. All our parents have shifted from one part of the world to this part. So it's already, we're born with it. No matter how Karbala you are, or how Khoja you are, or how Pakistani you are, and you're living and born and bred in the UK, you're still born into an integrated society, and you've still got like different opinions on things.
But what's interesting is that here, so I think the whole root of this thing is figuring out who you are. And I feel like here, people are very uncomfortable with who they are. It's a blanket statement based on what I've seen people have interacted with.
Here, yani, in London.
People can be very uncomfortable with who they are, and as a result, you have all this.
In what sense?
So again, it's that tribal thing. It's like I'm part of this community, or for even like the whole sectarianism thing here. Really, I believe it stems from a lot of uncertainty about who you are.
Yeah.
Therefore, you cling to your identity, and as a result, everyone who's different from you is wrong. Everyone who's different from you needs to be fought. you know, either physically or verbally.
Yeah.
Right. So in America, it's very different. I don't see that. In America, it's like we have our roots. We're Arab American, or we're Iraqi, or we're Asian American, or, you know, Pakistani American. Where we have our roots, which we're proud of, but we're American as well. There's
Yeah.
much more of acceptance about who you are and where you're living. And I think that's really important. Being comfortable with who you are, it really leads to, you know, I think a more cohesive and better society ultimately.
Sayed, can I ask you a question?
Go on.
Okay, so you know this TikTok, and I'll just repeat it if anyone missed it earlier. We read a TikTok. It said Arabs invented Islam, which is in itself is just like a crazy statement. No one invented Islam, but anyway, Arabs invented Islam. If you're not an Arab, don't call yourself a Muslim. Can I ask you?
Go on.
Yeah, as an Arab, do you feel any sort of superiority, or even, for example, a pride which may creep into becoming superiority due to the fact of where you're from, the language you speak, or anything like that?
In all honesty, no. I'll say no, and it's not just me trying to like hide something. But
Yeah.
I've never ever thought of it from that perspective. But so I'm going to answer that in a way from how I understood it, is that when you see an Arab, you automatically think they're Muslim.
Correct.
That's how I grew up, by the
Yeah,
way. So
yeah.
I used to find it weird if I found out there was like a Jewish Arab or like a Christian Arab. I'm like, it's impossible. And then sometimes, you know, someone can look so Arab, you can even assume he's Muslim, but his name is Michael. You're like,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
going on? Because we automatically have like this perception that Arabs are Muslim automatically. But no, I don't think.
But for
Arabs
example,
invented
because
Islam.
you're okay, so let's get more specific. You're Karbala'i, Iraqi Shia.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you feel a sense of ownership when you see non-Iraqis or anyone of any background doing ziyarah of Imam Hussein?
Of course.
Just
not.
as an example.
No.
Okay.
Just like how you go to Mecca for Hajj, for Umrah, the whole world, no matter where you are, all 7 continents. Same thing with Karbala. You don't feel like you're...
You know what's interesting? So a really good like example of kind of trying to portray what the point you're trying to make is African American Muslims.
Yeah.
So I've been interacting with a lot in America, and I've realized like their whole thing is like we've been here for like hundreds of years in America. So we are really the only native Muslim Americans in the country. The rest,
That's
you know, the
crazy.
other Muslims that came in the last 50, 60, even 100 years are Arab or Pakistani or whatnot. But he's like, we shouldn't have to. So one guy was telling me, he's like, we shouldn't have to adapt to that culture because we have our own culture. So he was even telling me like this guy a good friend of mine who I really respect. He'd been to Hausa as well, and he studied in Qom. And he was saying, because we, for example, our group of people, we listen to hip hop. That's revolutionary because that's part of our culture. You know, we do a lot of things that you might not do. And he was even having like a lot of conversations with me in regards to the way we look at religion. He goes, if you take that same thing, the same way you preach religion and the same way you understand religion, and put it inside the ghetto, put it in Compton or Watts or in Oakland, you know, people won't understand it. But if you take the principles and you bring those in, then they can adapt to it. You know, so for example, his whole thing was that, what's the urf when it comes to fiqh, for example? There's a few things he said which I want to say on the podcast, but his general argument was like, look, if you look at the idea of urf, what's accepted in society, right? If you have that as a kind of gauge for Islamic principles, then they'll be completely different almost sometimes if you go to the ghetto and you go to African American communities, because they have a whole different culture, right? So the way they almost interpret religion sometimes can be different or seen as different, you know? And that's the thing, like historically, our religion has come from Arabia and Persia.
Yeah.
And as a result, you could argue that it's been seen or interpreted through those kind of eyes. It hasn't been interpreted through American eyes, through African American eyes, in the modern day kind of context. You know, I think that's really interesting. So it's really like changed my thinking about how I think about Islam, Shia Islam, and practicing Islam and culture in our society. Because we ultimately here, especially in the UK, I would argue more so, but even in America, we are always clinging to who we were in the East as identities, right? A lot of us haven't really accepted that we're in the UK. So we spoke about this yesterday, Sayed Mustafa Qazwini,
Yeah.
right? My favorite speaker. Why? Because he has in his brain, in his mind, he's understood that
He's
I'm
a
here
German.
in America. You know, he's probably like, you know how he is, like, he watches State of the Union, he gets involved with the
Politics,
mayor, with
Super
the
Bowl.
interfaith community,
Yeah,
Super
yeah.
Bowl, like Thanksgiving, all that stuff. Like he's, you know, agree or disagree. I
integrates,
understand that principle. Like he's like, I'm here, I'm living here, I'm gonna embrace the place I'm in because I'm not living in Karbala anymore. I'm not living in Iraq anymore or the UK. I'm living in Southern California, so I have to understand the culture around me.
Yeah.
Especially him as a preacher, because I'm an imam. He's a preacher, right? So I have to understand where I am, right? If my mindset is still back there, then I can't speak to people. He told this really funny story. I listened to a lot of his lectures. He goes, there was a speaker that I was speaking to. He left America. He moved, I think, back to the East. And he goes, I was invited to a university to give a talk about Islam.
Yeah.
And the MC or whoever, the professor that was inviting him, she called him up and she extended her hand. And he goes, I didn't shake a hand and I'm proud of it. And he's like, well, okay, fine. But you made yourself and you made Islam look bad in front of all the people that were there to think about Islam, right? And he's like, he goes, I realized that he didn't understand where his mindset was still. I'm not talking about shaking hands as a fiqh principle. I'm saying think about the philosophy behind that. Like, understand where you are, understand what group you're sitting in, and then understand how you can live your religion and preach your religion.
So there's a difference then, of course, because naturally we all do things like which are native to our culture or where we live. So, for example, in the UK, we'll all observe bank holidays, and we'll all, you know what I mean? Like we're conscious of society and the societal norms. We'll say the same phrases to the same shopkeepers that people of different backgrounds will use. And
what's going on,
you know
boss?
what I mean? Yeah, what's happening, boss? Like things like that. 2 wings and chips, them ones. But no, the idea being is that it's embedded in us because we're born and brought up in the society. But what the Sayyid is doing, which is different, is he's actively embracing it and then trying to make changes to himself, so maybe he can engage.
Well, shows Islam is compatible no matter where you are.
Yeah, of course.
That's the point. It's meant to be. I mean, it's not just meant for one area of the world. It's meant to be, you know. At the same time, I'll say on the flip side, it's also worth remembering that we have so much hadith about how Islam is strange, and how Islam will leave this world as strange. You'll always be strange to people, and how, for example, the non-believers will never accept you unless you are like them. So there's that kind of fine line where you're embracing your identity of where you are, but you're also not giving up your Islamic principles,
Of course.
as a result. And sometimes they can be, you know, they can be really at odds with Islam. I know right now, for example, in America, the LGBTQ thing is a big challenge for a lot of people because, like, you know,
even here in the UK,
here actually worse,
I think it's bigger,
especially in schools,
I
right?
think it's probably worse.
But everyone's like, look, like we appreciate where we are. We're not going to enforce our ideology on anyone else, but at the same time, we have our principles, right? And we have to abide by them. And that's what's weird in America is that you have the conservatives or the Republicans for one side who are pushing, you know, Muslims from like a racist angle, and then you have the Democratic and liberal side, progressive side, which is like, oh, we embrace you, but come as we want, not as who you are. Do you understand? So there's kind of like, and then you're just kind of stuck in the middle. You don't know where to go.
That's interesting because there's similarities between that mentality and if you're bringing it back to the communities within our school of thought and within our madahib and all of that, you might have a case where, for example, someone is saying you're welcome to attend our center, you're welcome to participate in our majalis, but you have to do things our way. For example, there are, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, Said, but when it comes to time of mourning and you're doing matam or latam, Iraqi women don't stand up and they don't beat their chests. They will sit down on their legs. If I'm not mistaken.
Other ways of mourning,
they've got different ways of mourning, and you know, in my community, it's done, for example, the same way as the men do it, identically. Or, for example, in some communities, you hear the name of the 12th Holy Imam, you stand up, hand on heads. Other communities, you sit down. Ziyarat Tawarith, Ziyarat Ashura. Some you sit down, some you stand up. And I've been to places where if a guy's sitting down during Ziyarat Tawarith and the whole mosque is standing up, everyone's looking at him like, who's this newcomer? Do you know what I mean? So it's we are at risk at sometimes of doing that, and we might look at someone saying, you're welcome to enter our space, but enter as we wish. Do you see what I mean?
I remember one scholar told me this story. I won't mention his name. He was like, he converted someone to Islam. This is in America, right? And she goes, the next day she came to the mosque and it was Muharram.
Oh my God.
And they were doing Latam with Matam, right? And he goes, she told me something. And I say this, I narrate the story as someone who loves Matam myself, right? But it's interesting to think about. She told me, Sayed, the people that, the American people will never understand this. They will never be able to comprehend this. And he's like, that changed my whole thinking. Because we don't think about that. And I'm telling you, like, I used to be a Sunni. I know for me, Matam, like for me, for us right now, it's very normal, right? But as a Sunni, it used to freak me out. Because I could never understand it. I didn't really understand like why someone would ever do that. I've never seen it before in my life. On the flip side, I'm from a Sufi family, so they do zikr, right? And when I show my Shia friends zikr, they're like, what the hell, what is this? Like they don't get it. So there's always a kind of like, you know, other side is a bit weird kind of mentality, but also like I think we need to appreciate where we are and what's the best way to practice our religion and understand that, you know, we are in a culture that is very different to the culture that we enjoy and we appreciate sometimes.
But do you accept that or do you adapt what you're doing? So for example, with Matam, in that case, or dhikr if you're from a Sufi family and so on, do you change the way you do things to appease the external?
So for me personally, I can't speak for everyone. For me personally, like I have a connection, I have a way that I connect to Imam Hussein.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a very specific kind of style of majalis and matam. Like that's how I am. That's me, my personal connection to my Imam. If I step outside, and let's say, for example, I'm gonna recite for a non-Muslim crowd or go to a non-Muslim an event which is not of the same demographic, I need to understand what is the playground, like who am I speaking to, who am I preaching to, and embrace them the best way. We have some people, for example, that julus, prime example of julus. You know how it is with us in julus, and this is us. We see this especially in America sometimes. They'll have juluses, processions. Everyone's doing matim, topless matim, no signs in English, and the average American's like, okay, why should I care about this?
It will look
right?
barbaric to them. Yeah.
The best thing we did in London, 2014, I think it was, when we did the Ashura March, and they made it about an anti-terrorism march. Remember this? All those no to ISIS.
one.
You know, I found
Like
that
the
strange.
Huh?
I found that strange
but
because
the thing is,
I was used to a certain way of.
I know you were
seeing
used to, but the thing
procession.
is, it made the news the next day.
Yeah, it did.
It made the news. It was all over the news. It was like
It was anti-Daesh.
10,000 Muslims marched against terrorism. Isn't that the point of Ashura? I'm saying that's the point. Why you're not going in a procession to make yourself feel better. You're going in a procession. Why? What's the philosophy? To teach people about Imam Hussein. So what's the best way to do that? You have to ask yourself that. And that's what we don't do, unfortunately. And look, I appreciate, you guys know me. I love Arabic Latmiya. I love, listening to Matma.
And we love your poetry.
Thank you, bro. I love Majalis. I love a certain way. I love being in the Kabbalah Husseini. That's my jam. That's my home.
Yes.
I get it. But I have to appreciate that, there's some things I do for myself, for my own personal connection to Imam Hussein, with the people that are close to me. And there's other things that when I step outside that my community and I'm in a different land, I've got an obligation ultimately to spread that message as best I can. So I need to appreciate that, it's a different world, a different way of thinking. And ultimately, look, I think it's very simple. You think about what your hedef is. What's your goal? I remember one time a speaker told me, he's like, we want to do a female majalis, so female-led majalis. So the woman will give a lecture in front of both the men and the women, which for us is like crazy, right? I was like, look, I get what you're trying to do. I understand it. But how about instead of doing that, don't do something that's going to annoy people. Think about what your goal is. So your goal is to get a woman to give a majlis or give a lecture in front of men and women. What's the best way to reach that goal? Think about it like that. That's a better way to look at things rather than trying to push the wave too much. So if you figure out what your goal is, let's say your goal is to teach non-Muslims about Imam Hussein, or to publicly commemorate Imam Hussein, or to whatever it is, or to spread Islam, whatever it is. Once you figure out what your goal is, you can figure out and who your target audience is. Then you can figure out the best way to reach that goal. I think that's the one thing a lot of us lack is wisdom. It's having that wisdom to do not what we like, but what's right.
But should that wisdom be from all of us, an expectation, or is it from community leaders? Because I don't think, everyone, the problem is if you leave that for us to make decisions, everyone has an opinion. But I think it's important to see leadership. People.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, I've become. The thing is, how it is with communities. I'm sure everyone who's watching can and listening can really relate to this. But sometimes some communities it's very difficult to try and get your community leaders to be on board with some stuff. Yeah. Or to appreciate your perspectives, and it can really become it can really drive you crazy trying to push people to do what you want to do. Ultimately, I think you just deal with the cards that you have, with what's within your effort, within your hands, and try your best to change what you can.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think generally there's a responsibility on us to embrace what we have in terms of what we've been taught, our identity, our culture.
So, for example, if you can change programs at the mosque, do it. If you can't, then find another way.
And you do what you can to your best, leave to God the rest.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
the philosophy.
Whatever's within your hands.
Like that saying.
Even me, for example, there was a time where, for example, I wasn't getting invited a lot to recite poetry, and it kind of upset me. I was like, I want to recite a lot. I was like, I've got my own platform. I can create stuff on Instagram. I can create stuff on YouTube.
That's the beauty about.
So I use what was available to me to do what I want.
And that's the thing about this society in this day and age. Now you have you have new things. For example, you've got organizations like youth organizations in London are now more than ever accepting people from different backgrounds. I went to an Iraqi-led youth majlis in English in Muharram last year. Shout out to Akbar Foundation. And bro, you had an Urdu Marsiya being recited before the lecture. I'm thinking, this mashallah is incredible because as a non-Arab speaker, and I recite myself and I enjoy that. That's how I connect as well. That caught my attention. But now we're getting to that stage, and I don't think 10 years ago, and we also have to thank you guys as well, because English majalis, English poetry, English recitation, all of that kind of things has evolved the community at large and integrated people in it. I think we should move on and kind of talk
Can I
about
say something?
Yeah,
You touched a bit about culture and everything. Yeah. So, is culture destroying Islam? I'm going to ask this question because you were also bringing up the example of Ashura procession. So, for example, culturally, back, let's say in Indo-Pak, if we can go back to those countries, it's fine, it's normal for you to identify as Shia and go be your chest, take off your shirt in the streets. Why is it a problem here if it's happening here? Is it because it's destroying Islam?
People don't understand it.
So culture can technically destroy Islam.
It depends on the culture. I mean, again, like it's just like if people don't understand it. I'll give you a prime example. So you just mentioned Akbar Foundation Majlis, yeah? You know, like we love those majalis. That's like where we grew up. That kind of setting, and you know. I recited last Muharram in Dearborn Heights. Mosque, mostly Lebanese American, this demographic has been in America for the past 100 years.
Yeah.
They're very Americanized, right?
Yeah.
Sitting on chairs, all the lights are on, you know, no matam at all. After the lecture finished, I was reciting poetry, right? So there was no like kind of like hour and a half matam that we're used to, you know? But I was like, you know what, like this is what's good for them.
It works for them.
Huh?
It works for them.
It works, not just it works for them, this is how they are. So let me do the best that I can in that specific environment, right? If I try to bring what we have and put it there, they won't appreciate it. Like, they don't understand this.
Said you asked, is culture killing Islam? Yeah. Firstly, if I'm being completely honest, I think you're asking the two wrong guys, but also the two right guys. The reason why I say this is you look around, like, and maybe Nouri, you agree with me, but 90% of people that we're surrounded with have a homeland, can speak their mother tongue fluently, are nationalistic.
That's one thing you Khojas love, by the way. You don't have a homeland. It's your favorite talking point.
Bro, on a level. No, as in, for example, as the majority of the Khoja community will be able to say, like, yeah, we don't feel connected to India, but our family migrated from Tanzania, for example. But me personally, I don't have that. I have like a number of countries. And I know, for example, the other thing, you know, mother tongue, waving the flag, supporting your native homeland in a cricket final or a football final, whatever it is. I don't think that's something me and Nouri will understand to the fullest extent. So culture in its rawest form, which is purely like Urdu majalis, Pakistani majalis, and Iraqi Arabic majalis, and Iranian Persian. Do you get what I'm saying? Like that in itself, I don't think we're qualified to speak.
A prime example, how did you feel when Iraq won the Gulf Cup?
I was so happy.
There you go, bro.
There you go, there it is.
You know, my mom, who has got nothing got to do with football, was actually watching that match. Believe it or not. Like, Mama, what's going on?
So this is what's funny, like in Dearborn, so, you know, same kind of...
Because she had the connection with her homeland.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And that's the thing, like I saw all these Iraqis celebrating. I was like, oh, I appreciate this, but it's not really... I can't get involved. I'm not Iraqi, you know?
Yeah.
Even though I travel there all the time, even though all my friends are Iraqi, even though the community is Iraqi, I can't really get involved in this because I'm not actually Iraqi myself, right? So there was always that kind of disconnect that we feel. And I fully relate to what you're saying. Maybe I'm Khoja as well.
Yeah, but I think you are at heart. You're becoming more
from
organised by
Pakistani
the
to
day.
Iraqi to Khoja.
Do you know what it is? When Nouri messages you and he asks you to send me a time and a schedule and so on, I think he's becoming more Khoja by the minute.
So I'll tell you, I need to recite at 7:58.
7:58.
You know, have you seen when they give like the majalis schedule?
Yeah. But that's normal to me. Like I know
In our community, Majlis starts, it says advertise 7 p.m.
For us, it
Lecture
starts
goes up
at
8:30 Quran
Yeah.
For us, 8:23 to 8:57 on the dot. Before, after this, you know how many times, mashallah, I have to give a shout out because I love our community. I don't want to gun it at all, but that's normal for us. Like in the community I've grown up in, like on the dot timing, and people know communities, I think, for different things. Like with me, people always say, wow, mashallah, you guys are so organized and very, you know, people talk about like the same qualities, organization, punctuality. You know, when they talk about Khojas, we talk about Iraqi communities, there's people talk about passion and latam and masaib and all of these things, qima. Like there's like set things which are core tenets to the community and that identity.
Husseini culture, but it's
Husseini culture.
specific to the Husseini culture, not as general culture, because general culture is very, like if you meet like non-religious or non-Shia Iraqis, their culture is completely different to what we're used to, you know?
But that makes culture beautiful, bro. Like culture beautifies our practice of religion.
How do you identify yourself?
Male.
I'd say
Non-binary? No, 'cause that's the problem.
I think I'd say I'm 27 years old.
We're talking about culture and identity and everything. You know, we
Yeah.
have this problem, and it's a big problem. But I think a big problem we have in our own selves as Shia is how do we identify our own selves?
Yeah.
We have an issue, for example, we have a crisis. Someone follows a different marja. We like,
of
although
course,
all Shia, we're all Muslim, but we all have issues, for example. But I'm comfortable saying I'm a British Shia Muslim. I'm not gonna say I'm an Iraqi British Shia Muslim.
But
That's too much.
that's what I'm saying. That we're living in a world now where by the year you have another label added to the list. You might follow Sayyid Sistani, may Allah lengthen his life, and for example, before you know it, there's infighting between people who are muqallids from the same marja. Why? What's the problem? You know what I mean? Or forget even the same marja. Like, why is there an issue with people from other communities within Shia Islam? I don't get it. Obviously, you have difference of opinion with Manaja. Some are very politicized, some are not. But that should not affect your relationship with a brother. And you,
By the way,
believe
that's one thing that I really appreciate about London. When I travel,
Yeah.
and people are like, oh, you know, they follow this margin, we follow this margin. I'm like,
Who cares?
Are you guys still there? Like, mentally, are you guys really still
Yeah,
there?
man.
Like, that's something we left, like, as a community. Like, we don't...
I gave up on that.
No, as
years
in generally as a community,
ago.
like, it's not something that we talk about or care about for the past 10, 15 years, which is something I love.
I think some of the elders might, but I genuinely,
Maybe.
I genuinely don't think our community cares. I think anyone under 14,
No, but as in, like, when you go to a majlis, for example, you have a pretty, you know, decent demographic, both ethnic-wise and in terms of who they follow.
yeah,
In terms of the marja, which is, you know, like, it's, I still can't believe it's a talking point. I still can't believe it's a point of contention. Like, are you really still there? Like, it's very strange. I still find it strange.
Let me ask you guys another question, yeah? Kind of quick fire ones. We've talked earlier about this Arab superiority thing, and now we're talking about mixing a majalis. If someone comes up to you and says, you're a non-Arab, for example, an Arab comes up to you and says, I can't, you know, you're reciting this wrong, your name is Raza, it should be Radha, for example.
Okay.
You call yourself Haider, it should be pronounced Haider.
So,
Qasim,
can I
Jasim.
intervene? This happened to me, by the way.
Okay.
This really upset me.
Okay.
Really upset me. One time I was in DC
Yeah,
and I was getting food from a food truck. And the guy was Pakistani.
Right.
My friend was Pakistani. He's like, oh, he goes to me, where are you from? I was like, oh, I'm from Pakistan originally. And you know me, I'm like third generation Pakistani. I don't speak Urdu. I wish I could, but I can't. It's not my fault. I can't.
Kia hal hai.
Yeah, maybe a few things here and there.
TK.
yeah.
Like, when
That's all I know.
Yeah, like when my grandparents speak, I can get it. But like generally, I don't understand Urdu, right? And I speak Arabic, so it's like it's all over the place.
Yeah.
And he goes to me, he goes like, oh, so where are you from? I was like, Pakistan. He started speaking to me in Urdu. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak Urdu. And this guy went on a run. He goes, you kids, you know, you don't, you know, didn't your parents teach you Urdu? What's wrong with you? You've been forgetting it.
Ajib.
And I was like, wow, like you really just threw my parents, my upbringing, my whole life experience under the bus. Like you don't even know me. You don't know my 20, I was 25 years, 26 at the time. You don't know my 26 years of history. You don't know what kind of experiences I've had in order to, like, but just one blanket statement just judge me like that. And it really hurt me. And until today, like now and then I'll see comments online like, oh, this guy's Pakistani, but he pretends to speak, he speaks,
that's very
he speaks
true.
with an Iraqi dialect. It's like, no, but it's like, I don't fit in the kind of, you know, demographic that you want me to fit in. Like my experience is like everyone's experience is very fluid and very deep. You know, everyone's got like, but me, I didn't grow up in the way you expect people to grow up, where they grow up in a specific community, specific culture. Their parents migrated 20 years ago, and that's who they are. You know,
But let me ask you a question.
that enriches me, by the way. I like it.
Because that's what I'm saying. So people will do that, and they will sometimes harshly judge you for your name or anything about your identity. Like, for example, you not being able to speak Urdu and people judging you harshly because you're of Pakistani origin. Yeah, but that's where I'm saying potentially this concept, whether you agree or not, of Arab superiority comes from. People will say, well, these guys, they have most of the imams, or if not all the imams in the Middle East or in Iran or whatever, and they think they own the religion. Do you know what I mean? So when you go to Iraq, you have to understand their culture, you have to abide by their culture, which personally I don't think is wrong at all. But I know there's a lot of people who feel like that. Do you know what I mean? Or for example, they will respect someone who comes to their center and speaks with proper makhraj, and they can pronounce their Quran perfectly and their tajweed is great and so on. There's like a level of, wow, this guy must be a scholar or something like that, because you're from a community where people say wala zwalin instead of wala dhalin. And this is not a joke, like this is an actual thing. Like there's I've grown up listening to scholars who struggle to pronounce because of their native tongue and you know what they speak. But people judge, do you know what I mean? Rightly or wrongly, but it exists.
I tell you something, and I say this on the podcast in front of how many people are listening. Yeah. Like ever since I moved,
God's watching as well.
God's watching as well. Ever since I moved, I found it very difficult to make friends in the community I'm in, and I know for a fact the reason is because everyone there is mostly Arab, and I'm not part of the demographic, and that's unacceptable. Like I don't have that
That's
problem.
crazy.
It's funny because I don't have that problem anywhere else. Not in this community, not in the community outside of where I am now.
That's crazy.
But it's like, and the thing is, it's not overt racism. It's just very subtle. So oh yeah, well it's like well we'll hang out. We'll set something up. We'll let you know.
But you don't.
I hear that all the time, by
welcomed.
the way. We'll call you. We'll let you know.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that's the problem, because when I have friends that are Lebanese that move to the same community, oh come over, bring the family. Yeah, we'll have I don't see any of that with me, and it's very very. The thing is, for me, Hamza, I can handle it. I'm okay. But there's people that we know and people in our communities that are real like reverts, like coming from like white backgrounds, black backgrounds, other non-Arab backgrounds, and they must face it really, really badly. And that's, by the way, with me, with a lot of people knowing who I am, them seeing me recite, them respecting me.
Yeah.
With that, still there is that kind of barrier there. With me being essentially adopted Iraqi, there's still that barrier there.
I think we
so. Imagine how it
mentioned
is for like a revert who's not actually, who hasn't got any ties to the community at all, and who is,
Which do you remember last year? Sorry, bro.
No, go.
Do you remember last year we name dropped Nouri in the racism pod? we talked about.
I saw that clip.
Did you hear that?
Much sent me the clip. Yeah.
What did we say?
We said we were talking about how reverts find it hard to get married or to assimilate into communities, and we talked about reverts who are not visibly non-Muslim or were not Muslim. Do you get me? Or like for example, you look at Nouri, you can't tell whether he's Sunni or Shia. All you know is he looks probably Pakistani, therefore he's probably a Muslim. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I think that's a compliment.
I hope so, inshallah. No, but do you get what I'm saying? Like, I completely agree with you.
No, but honestly, like with me personally, and like I recommend like this advice to anyone who's listening, and you guys as well, and myself, like I try my best when I go anywhere. When I speak to someone, I give them my full attention. Not just in terms of, because people speak to me sometimes, and I see this, like they don't realize, like they're, oh, Nouri, how you doing, bro? You okay? Yeah, I'll see you around, yeah? And then you kind of walk off to the other side of the room. And it's like, you don't, like it would be nice if we could have actual conversation, because I don't have many of those conversations in that community. Right? So I try my best, like whenever I speak to someone, give them my full attention, especially if I don't know them. Because that's the point of our religion, isn't it? To be merciful.
We've been friends for many years, Nouri.
Yeah.
Okay. And
decades.
A long time. And I don't remember an instance where I thought to myself, either you're a Pakistani or you're not an Arab. It's never come to my mind. Like a friend is a friend at the end of the day. And I think that's something everyone should look at. But I have a question for you, Nouri.
Yeah.
You have Pakistani origin.
Yeah.
But you identify mainly as British, can I say?
London.
Okay, forget
Not
me.
from Birmingham, bro.
London.
Yeah.
You're from I'm not gonna mention the area.
London. Northwest
London.
North Wheezy.
Best
Makes money
realistically.
real easy.
So you're originally Pakistani.
W2. I don't live there anymore, so I can say it. W2.
You identify as a Londoner,
Yeah.
but how on earth do you speak Arabic?
I don't know, bro.
How do you understand Arabic? Let alone
I don't
speak
even
it?
know myself.
Allah Basim.
I don't honestly like,
Because from the very beginning years of our friendship, you were talking Arabic.
bro, I don't know.
I was
don't-
shocked.
Yeah, it's weird, man.
I was like,
Honestly, it's weird because so when I became Shia, I was like 15 years old, and I just started coming to the community that we go to, and just literally sitting in lectures. I remember so many Irish used to come and I was asked, yo, what does this mean? What does this word mean? What does that word mean? And somehow I just picked it up. I don't know.
by the way, he'll respond accurately.
Yeah, I know.
And then when they find out, okay, he's not Arab, like, huh? I forget not being Arab before he's Iraqi.
But it's really fun, by the way, because now when I go to community sometimes when we're working,
yeah.
they'll be speaking Iraqi like behind my back.
They're thinking you don't understand.
I know what they're saying, and I won't say anything. But before I leave, we're like, "Yo, Matt, come on, take it."
Yeah.
In Arabic,
Drop them
They'll
a
be like,
quick
Yeah, I'll
line.
drop them like a quick. I'll do.
Yeah,
Where are you
yeah.
from?
Well, we had the joke. We said we need to bring Nouri an Iraqi citizenship back in the day. I don't know if you remember.
Jinsia.
Jinsia.
Yeah, needs it.
Jinsia Iraqi, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think it's been like a...
Been an interesting
Yeah, it's been
conversation.
an interesting one. I think it's given me a lot of food for thought. I think I appreciate a lot more now. I think I definitely appreciate those who... You know what hit me the most? Can I be really honest?
Go on.
What you said about feeling welcome in the community.
Bro, I'm telling you, like and the thing is, like, I never realized this until I moved.
Yeah.
Like, I never realized how. And the thing is, me, like, I even put an Instagram post about this. Like, I'm very comfortable being alone.
I know.
The lonely
I
posts.
travel, but
You're very
I love
introverted.
that, by
I
the
travel alone. Like, I'm okay with it. I'm happy. And even then,
Still
I'm not lonely, but I get moments where I feel really lonely. And it's difficult because, like, I know people there. I'll message them, like, hey, let's go out. Yeah, inshallah, bro. Yeah, inshallah, we'll set up. Inshallah, we'll let you know. Inshallah. Oh, absolute, like just formalities and mujamalat. It's like, if it was me personally, again, maybe because I can see the other side, I get it. But like, if someone reached out to me a bunch of times and said, hey, let's go out, at some point, like, you know what?
You get the hint.
It's my God-given duty. Like, I've got to be a bit merciful. He's obviously move countries in a different world.
Yeah.
Let me try and let me be a bit merciful and act like the prophet, and try and welcome him in, right? But it doesn't exist. I'm not making a blanket statement. There are a lot of people that I do know there and that are good friends of mine. But it's like I expect more from religious community.
Yeah.
I expect more. I expect a higher standard. I don't see that. And I know that even here we get lost in that as well. Because when I was living here, you know how it is. You're lost in your work. You're lost in your kind of social circle. People reach out to you and you're too busy for it, right? So I get the other side of it as well. But my point is that we should really try and, be more merciful to others and be more welcoming to others, especially those. You go to the mosque, you see someone sitting by himself. Yeah, you see a Riva who's eating by himself, go sit with him.
Yeah.
Like one thing I love, Mujtaba's dad, Shah, is that
Sayyid Riyadh al-Husayni.
I'll never forget
Hakeem
when
household.
we used to go to Hassania, and this guy, hey Siri, no, Sayyid Riyadh, not Siri. when we used to go to Hassania, I'll never forget, like, he would be the only guy sitting with the youth, like age 13, 14, 15, just eating with them. That's mercy, bro. That's love.
I've had like real conversations with him.
Me
with his
too.
father.
Me too.
But I see that now because, for example, mashallah, he'd say Riyadh passed on to his kids.
Yeah.
Mustafa, mashallah, is training
It's
children.
behind the scenes
Mustafa
somewhere.
al-Azim.
Sorry, we have mashallah a very sparse age range in the After Maghrib team.
I'm just gonna say, Nouri, in all honesty, I read that post. Although I don't feel lonely, but I really wanted to tell you are not alone. God is always there with you.
Thanks,
Beside
bro.
you. Beside you, always.
You messaged me, I
You'll
think.
never walk alone.
Yeah, I did message you. But I was gonna say God is always with you. But I was like, he should know.
No,
that
but the thing
already.
is that's the. So for me, I'm always like, okay. So the way my mind works is, if I'm going through something, however big or small it is, I'm like, okay, what's the point of this? How am I trying to? So I realized the point of this for me is just to have a bit of tawakkul on God and have Him as your best friend.
Do you know what, Nouri? I'll be honest.
I
yeah,
like that. Have God as your best friend.
That's another say Mustafa
it's
thing,
true,
by the way, which I love.
Beautiful.
Have God as your best friend. You know,
The thing is, you're
and be okay with being alone. And it sounds really depressing to say, and I'm so.
I'm sure there's millions.
I know, but
out
I
there
find
in
it
this
so weird that I'm saying
situation.
in the podcast, people might relate to it. Be
Yeah.
okay with being alone. Be okay with people not replying to you. Be okay with people not inviting you out and calling you. Be okay with the fact that you might be a revert in the community that doesn't accept you. It's tough. It's not easy.
It's part of the struggle.
It's part of the struggle. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so the reason I'm so vocal about this is because I never thought that this would be something that affects me. Because I'm very okay with being alone. Like when I was living here, we never used to barely see each other once every few months, and it wasn't that big of a deal. Like I was okay. I was busy
So
with work and
almost
stuff.
every day.
Huh? No,
we used to work together.
Before I moved after the channel,
Yeah.
like we wouldn't we see
That's
once
true.
every few months,
That's
and there's
true.
no hard feelings or anything.
Do you know what? I think it's inspirational because you, from a young age, you were on a mission to find ilm yourself and to find the true path. You did that alone. You integrated into a new culture. You did that alone. You learned a new language. You did that alone. Of course, you moved to a new country yourself, and all of those things you did and you were able to handle. And whilst doing that, of course, you're an introverted person. So you, like you said, you're, as long as I've known you, which nearly probably 10 years, you've always been comfortable doing that. Do you know what I mean?
But the reason I'm vocal about it, like I said, is because there's people out there that have it worse.
Of course.
People out there.
And bro,
when you go to the Hussein next time, like, look for the people that are on the sides.
that's what I'm saying. You know, you asked me when we talked earlier. I said that's what hit me because there's probably a lot of people who we don't realize because we're going to the same mosque we go to.
I guarantee you, a lot of people listening to this podcast are in that position right now. This is what I'm mentioning.
I'm sure. We have to be conscious. I mean, I met a brother at my local centre who I knew from university. I used to study in Birmingham. I was like, bro, what are you doing here? Because I moved to London. I was like, yeah, man, let's go out sometime. Never hit him up.
Happened.
And
I used to do that as well. Yeah.
That now, and of course, from my end, it may not have been conscious and definitely wasn't intentional, but now that's become something which I've clocked.
Yeah.
It's become conscious to me.
Yeah.
So I think, inshallah, we all can.
Well, you know, sometimes people's circumstances change, so they're not
Naturally,
always available. Let's be
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
No, so by the way, like I'll give a caveat. Like there needs, even on my part, there needs to be a big husn al-dhan and understanding that people have their own
Yes.
situations. But I'm speaking about on a very general level.
Of course.
Like be welcoming.
Just be a nice guy.
Yeah,
Khalas.
it's not that difficult.
Honestly,
I don't find it that difficult.
And it's not just with those who you've not seen recently or never met before. Even with your friends, like check in on them.
Bro,
Yes, now
simple.
and
Be
then.
like the Prophet.
Yeah.
What would the Prophet do? We thought, I'll see you later, bro. Walk away. He wouldn't do that.
He'll always come and check on you.
Bro, there's a story again from Sayyid Mustafa that I heard with the Prophet, and this is a big thing. I won't mention it in detail on this podcast.
Let's send you back. Bring Sayyid Mustafa instead.
Honestly, Sayyid Mustafa podcast.
MashaAllah.
But it's about
bless him.
sticking to your word. Sticking to your word is a big thing, especially for me. Like I try my whenever I can, however small it is, however big it is, stick to my word. Yeah, and he goes. The Prophet one time he promised someone he told someone he'll meet him on a certain day at a certain time. He waited 3 days for it.
No way.
People told him, well, come home. He goes, no, I gave the guy my word. I have to be here. Right? And so when you tell someone, oh, I'll hit you up, I'll give you a call.
Inshallah.
I'll
And
let
then
you know.
last minute they cancel.
Yeah,
I've seen those ones.
That's a promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
That's
right.
a promise. Even me,
People expect it.
but sometimes I've been in situations where I've told someone let's go out, and it's been so difficult for me to go. But I'm like, you know what? I gave you my word. I'm gonna come.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if I lose money. I don't care if I lose because if you're not worth your word, then as a man, what are you worth?
They say you know a mu'min by his time, by the way. So if you're giving someone like, I'm going to see you at 8 o'clock on that specific day,
Yeah.
and you cancel last
I
minute,
wish you didn't say the same.
His time and his
How
word.
many times do you rinse me about being late to the podcast?
you're never late.
Huh?
No matter how late you are, you're still early, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. You know, Sayyid Ali, MashaAllah, you're a patient guy. Sayyid Ali, he's named rightfully so after Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen says what? He says, I'm patient until my patience gets tired of my patience.
Yeah.
That's
why I
It
have
comes
so
out in
much-
his grey hairs. though,
Got
you
so
can
much
see.
grey hair.
Every time I see him, he's got more grey hairs.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. Cool. I
Yeah.
think it's been it's been an interesting chronology of talking points, but I think we've picked up a lot.
We have indeed. We have
got a lot.
indeed.
When you're back to the UK,
Back to the UK. I'm here in the UK right now.
and when you're coming back,
Oh, inshallah.
because you're going back to the US.
Probably like a few months.
Wait. Can we actually give like a date and time for you?
No,
Will we
your
see you? Will you come back onto the podcast?
I'm back and forth. You'll see me a lot, inshallah. But trust me, I told everyone like when I was leaving, I was like, oh, I was like, bro, let's be honest, we're gonna see each other the same month that I saw you before we left.
By the way, you've been gone for a year.
Yeah, I know.
My
You know what's crazy?
God.
My sister told me this. I came back on the same day that I left the year. Without realizing.
No
Ajib.
way.
Yeah, had no idea.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
May Allah bless you and your family always, and keep doing what you're doing, man. Honestly, you've got family here, and I don't just mean, of course, your family. You've got us, and we've built. I think in Ahlul Bayt TV, we've built. Everyone is built
this is literally a family.
yeah, that's
Literally
it.
a family.
We
Years
all
on,
had
we-
I've
something.
got memories now.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
I used to work right there in the office,
Yeah,
and you used to work
mine was there.
there
Say where was yours?
Downstairs.
downstairs, tech room,
Alhamdulillah.
all
Where the magic happened.
and we're still here 20 years later. No progression.
Anyway, guys, if you haven't already, hit subscribe. We look at the statistics always, so we know how many of you are watching and haven't hit that subscribe button. But if you want to see more international guests, then please, guys, hit the subscribe button. It means we can grow faster, we can grow more, and we can do more podcasts, because that's the goal, inshallah. And if you guys have got any ideas, what do you want to hear about, drop that in the comment section below. Have you just moved to a new community? How do you feel? Do you feel Arabs have a superiority complex in Islam? Do, for example, you feel that people don't give you their word? Do people promise you one thing and don't deliver? This is what we want to hear, guys. We want to hear your honest and very, very transparent feedback, inshallah, on the discussion, and really on anything else you want to hear. Say anything to add?
Just hit that subscribe button, and if there's anything you want to add that we have missed out in this conversation, leave in the comments, and inshallah we can continue this conversation with
Nouri,
everyone.
thank
at
you
home.
very much. Inshallah.
see you.
Until next time.
Take me with you to the States.
Come.
Pay for my Esther visa.
Get my
Actually, I
MAGA
need to get a full
When I say come, by the way, it means come. It doesn't mean like mujamalat. I'm being come. But you don't want to
Inshallah.
come.
Will you take us?
I won't take us. I come. I will.
I'm trying to get him to commit. so
I'll-
he can
I'll drive you to the
I can
hotel.
say you stick to your word.
I'll take
Ya
out for
Allah.
lunch.
Ya Allah.
Inshallah. I'll hold
Looking
you to
forward.
that. Inshallah.
Looking forward.
All right, guys. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Barakatuh.